Let's get into our re-ranking of the top 25. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. Okay. It's time. It was nut cutting time for several teams like Ole Miss and Penn State. And nuts have been cut. Let's see what the top 25 says. We've got both of ours averaged together. And so down here at the bottom, we got Fresno State, we got Air Force, Liberty, Kansas State, Notre Dame. Not much to say about that. Liberty, Air Force, and Fresno State, you can thank some of these Power 5 teams for crapping the bed and working their way out of the top 25, honestly. But, hey, good seasons for each of these teams. Liberty stays undefeated this weekend. Hugh Freeze left behind a pretty good product there. Notre Dame and Kansas State float around. Kansas State gets another big victory this past weekend. And by big, I mean on the scoreboard, not really a big game. So that's our 21 through 25. You got any comments on those?
Kansas State had a huge game against Baylor, put up almost 60 points. They won 59-25. I think 25 is a little bit too much to give up to Baylor, but Baylor was able to get a lot of like drives for some reason. It wasn't there weren't a whole lot of just like long touchdowns and weird plays. Like they kind of sustained some drives, which is a little bit weird for Kansas State and their defense to be giving up drives like that. But outside of that, I don't really have anything to add to those bottom five. Was Notre Dame on a bye this week? Am I missing that?
They must have been. I didn't see them.
I think they played week 0, so this may have been their second bye. So,
yeah, they played in Ireland to start the year. Yep. So I'm sitting here looking at the Big 12 standings, just because of Kansas State I was looking at. But so you've got Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Iowa State, all with a 5-2 conference record. So we got a knot going on there. And I don't really know how that is going to work out because I'm trying to think of the tiebreakers here. I'm going to have to go untie that knot whenever we get off air because I'm not sure who's got it the head-to-head there. I guess Oklahoma is the one that has got the head-to-head there. I'm not
with
I'm not
Kansas
sure.
State specifically.
Oh, I mean, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. So Oklahoma State we know has the head-to-head over Oklahoma.
Right. And then Oklahoma has the head-to-head over Iowa State, but they did not face Kansas State, and they won't face Kansas State.
And they won't. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think that the way that ESPN has it is pretty much how you can cut it for the most part. And, Iowa State, they play Kansas State at the end of the year, so that'll kind of shake itself out. They've got Texas this week as well. So Iowa State's probably going to be out of it.
And Oklahoma's got at BYU and then TCU at home to end the year.
Yep.
So
I really hope that in that race that Oklahoma State takes another loss. I think that the most deserving teams are Oklahoma and Texas to be in that Big 12 championship. That's the game that college football fans should be wanting, unless you're an Oklahoma State fan. But that's the game that we want. We want to see that rematch to see if Texas can get redemption and win out. If they are a top 4 team, then they'll be able to do that. So, but Oklahoma, they're the only team that I see in the Big 12 that's capable of beating Texas right now as well.
Yeah. Let's go into the next section here. Tied at 19, we got LSU and North Carolina, James Madison at 18, and then we got a 3-way tie at 15 with Oklahoma, Arizona, and Tulane. So all knotted up right there in the middle. Not too much to say about this group. I mean, Arizona was riding a hot streak. Maybe that seems to be cooling off, or Colorado just had a real good game plan for them this weekend. North Carolina shows their lack of defense is pretty appalling at times, just like LSU. And James Madison has had a great year, but banned from any bowl activities. But, Well, consolation prize, you get to be in the first and long college football top 25 here in week 11. So congratulations on that. So, what's your takes on these kind of these bottom groups, man? That was not the teams and the icons that I figured that we would be looking at uh, headed into week 12.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people don't really get eyes on James Madison, but just looking at their stats, I mean, their quarterback had 457 yards. He was 33 of 37 for 457 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah,
That is extremely productive. I know it was UConn, but to be that accurate, I think that the 457 is cool. Like that's a big stat, but 33 of 37 is outstanding. That's remarkable for a quarterback to do. No matter who you're facing, you showed accuracy. So I think that's pretty a pretty telling sign of a good quarterback. And their JMU's not a slouch of a team, and they deserve to be in the top 25, whether they have whether they're 10-0 or not. I think that they're just a pretty well equipped team. Um,
yeah,
and North Carolina escapes Duke, like you mentioned. That was one heck of a game, double overtime win. I'd love to see LSU and North Carolina in a bowl game. I think that'd be a really fun one to watch.
no
And
kidding.
then yeah, Arizona, the best of this bunch, had a struggled with Prime and the traveling circus show, but that happens a lot, and I think that Arizona is still deserving of a top 15 sort of ranking.
Yeah, absolutely. And we said that Oklahoma's tied for 15. We didn't talk about them, but there they are tied at 15. Utah 14, 13 Ole Miss, 12 Penn State, 11 Oregon State. Oregon State gets a big win. Um, Oklahoma gets a big win, and then those three middle teams there are losers. But they lost the teams that are ranked above them, so it's kind of hard to drop them way down whenever they're losing to you know top 5 teams in the country, top 10 teams in the country.
Yeah,
So Penn State, we know what their faults are, but they are a great defense. Ole Miss, not a great defense, but a pretty good offense, I think. Um, Utah kind of coming into form a little bit, figuring the offense out as the year goes on. But we know how strong they are defensively and upon the lines of scrimmage. So this group, while it does contain three of the losers from this week, we can't penalize those losers too much because of who they lost to. What do you think about this group?
yeah, it is kind of just the group of teams that with Ole
They got
Miss
their
and
nuts cut. We said it was
yeah,
nut cutting week.
yeah,
This
yeah.
was the nut cutties.
Yep, and you can make an argument that Oklahoma is better than Ole Miss or Penn State. Realistically, I think that for two lost teams, like these are kind of interchangeable. I think that Oregon State's kind of where I draw the line and say like, hey, they've got to be in the top 11 at least. You could probably swap Missouri and Oregon State, in some way, and I'd be fine with that. But yeah, ultimately these are really good teams that are kind of pushing for one of those New Year's Six games.
Yep, absolutely. Tied at number 9, we got the Missouri Tigers off of a big win over Tennessee. And also tied at ninth, we've got Louisville coming off of a huge win over Virginia. No, I'm just kidding. But not,
It's
I
close.
wouldn't say a convincing win over Virginia, but
They
a
had to
win
come back.
nonetheless.
So
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting as they were up 14 to nothing at halftime. So both
mhm.
teams had to come back in this game. Oregon at number 8 after a good performance. Alabama at number 7, we did not even talk about their game, but they absolutely beat the ever living crap out of Kentucky. Um, Kentucky could not figure out how to defend Alabama in this game whatsoever.
Yeah,
And Florida State is at 6. Um, did they move down in our ranking a little bit? Looks like they moved down.
yeah, they did.
And me and Mason agree. Out of the undefeated teams, we think that Florida State is the worst. Actually, I think Texas would beat Florida State as well. So uh, there we got Florida State at 6 after the Miami game this weekend. 27-20 they won against a really shat Miami team. What do you think about this group?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to have Florida State below Texas just because of the records, but it makes sense. I mean, from a power rating perspective, I don't think anybody is putting Florida State ahead of Texas. They're really not putting Florida State ahead of Alabama or Oregon as well. They should probably, from a power rating perspective and based off their record right now, realistically, they should be right around that 8 spot, and but that's not what we do. They deserve to be in the top, 6, top 5, somewhere around there. Just based off a record and what they've been able to do. I think that Alabama might be the best team of this bunch, just given what we've seen from them. And Jalen Milroe accounted for, I believe it was another 6 touchdowns. I think he had 3 in the air and 3 on the ground. So a really dominant performance by Milroe once again. And then Oregon, they look like one of the most complete teams in the country, regardless of conference. I think that of that bunch, those are the 2 that I circle and say like probably have the best shot at making the playoffs. Just from a power rating perspective.
Yeah. Yep. And then we get into the top 5. Texas at number 5, Michigan at 4, Washington at 3, Ohio State at 2, Georgia at 1. Texas flirted with disaster a little bit, but they gave up a 20-point lead that they had in that game against TCU. Look, I'd be lying if I said I was overly impressed by Texas at this point, but I know what potential they've got. I know what talent they've got. This is a good Texas team, and I think they're in good shape to win their conference and go to the college football playoff, just as good a shape as any. Michigan, I wish they weren't in here. I don't think they should be allowed in the playoff, personally, but it is what it is. They are going to be allowed to be in the playoff, and they have a formidable team. And if we're actually just looking at football teams, not whether they deserve it because of a cheating scandal, yeah, they're a top 4 team in the country, and that's why we have them here. Washington, number 3. Washington showing some growth, as a lot of these good teams are. Georgia, Alabama, Washington seem to be maybe trending again. Washington, it seemed like, kind of went through a lull there. I think Michael Penix has, battled some injuries. I've heard Washington fans say the team was sick, yada yada yada. Okay, seems like maybe they're getting their sea legs back a little bit. Ohio State's got a big matchup looming with Michigan. We're gonna have another set of nuts cut, and we'll figure out which one it is here in a couple weeks. And then Georgia looked like the most complete team in the country this past Saturday. They just look like the all around best team. There's not a huge deficiency or weakness anywhere on this team. It doesn't seem like, but they're a prolific passing attack, a feisty defense led by a coach who can make some serious in-game adjustments. Georgia is as dangerous as ever, especially considering the field that surrounds them.
I agree, and starting with Texas, isn't it weird how like it seems like they have the same identity that they've always had, but they just have better players, so they tend to win games that in seasons past they would have lost. Like they would have blown this lead, last year.
Yeah.
But this year, because Quinn Ewers came back, I mean, they would have lost this game if Quinn Ewers doesn't come back. I'm quite confident. He had a pretty good game, 317 yards, 22 of 33, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But I feel like the Texas team, like culturally, isn't that much different. But they just have better players. So I don't know, just kind of a weird look at kind of what they've been doing and how they kind of played with their food once again with TCU, and it almost cost them. So I'm definitely circling that number 5 slot with Texas and wondering, like, are they a really good like playoff type team? I don't know. We'll see. Michigan, they handled business against Penn State. Didn't show much on offense. I'm questioning who they really are on offense. I don't think that they're just going to run the football against a team like Ohio State that's coming up in a couple of weeks. I don't think they'll do that against a Georgia or an Alabama if they face them in the playoffs. I don't think that that's going to get it against Oregon if they face them in the playoffs. We've got to see them start to pass the ball, and they've got to do it without elite pass catchers. They don't have that. It's very obvious, and so we'll see. They've got some tough games coming. I'd be interested to see if they even make it past Ohio State. And if they don't, if they lose to Ohio State, I think that they're out of the playoffs. I don't think that Michigan gets in with one loss, with everything else unfolding the way it is so far. Washington, I thought they had a really good game against a tough Utah team. That's a top 15 team, and Utah, they had some things go their way in this game, and they kept it close, kept it within a touchdown, but ultimately, and we kind of suspected that Washington was going to be able to win this game, but Utah did what they did and created some chaos and was in it late. Again, only losing by a touchdown. So Washington deserves to be in the top 3. They remain undefeated. It looks like they're on a crash course for a Pac-12 championship game with Oregon, and we'll see a repeat there. I really hope that's what we get at least. Then you got Ohio State, and I mean Ohio State. They dismantled Michigan State this week. There's a really bad Michigan State team, y'all. So there's not too much to glean from that. Realistically, we're not going to know much about Ohio State until the last week of the year when they face Michigan. So just hit the pause button on the Buckeyes for now, and Michigan for now. And we'll see what happens in week 13. But then you got Georgia. They just absolutely throttled the Rebels this week and looked like the most complete team. I don't know who's really going to doubt that. I'd be surprised if the CFP committee has anybody but Georgia at number 1. I'd be pretty surprised by that, but we'll see. That the AP poll has continued to have Georgia at number 1 and CFP hasn't. So let's see if the top 10 win against Ole Miss was a good enough win to add to their resume to boost them above Ohio State in this case, and for them to claim the number 1 slot. I'm also anxious to see where Michigan falls in their rankings after they finally get a good win on their resume against Penn State. So that's just something to kind of look forward to. But for the rankings that matter, in the first and long rankings, this is what we came up with. Tell us what you think about this. Where's your team fall? Where are we wrong in this ranking? And what do you like about it? And what do you guys see coming in the future?
Absolutely. So that's about it, folks. We got our reaction